Today we're going to be talking about blue light and what we can do about workplace wellness. And I'm delighted that we got Dhruvin Patel with us today. He's an optometrist and an entrepreneur encouraging a much more healthy relationship with technology in the digital age. I'm going to let Dhruvin speak a little bit more about himself and introduce himself. But before I do so, I just want to remind you that if you have any technical problems during this broadcast, we will be recording it and it will be available on our website afterwards. So don't worry, and you can also share it with your colleagues. We also have an opportunity to ask questions. There is a box on the right-hand side. If you'd like to put a question about the webinar to us, please write it in the box. And what I'll do is at the end, I will have a look and try and put as many of these questions as possible to our speaker. So really, without further ado, I think I'm going to hand over and let the blue light speak for itself. So Dhruvin, can I hand over to you, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Catherine. Just checking that you can hear me here.
I can hear you.
Super. Okay, brilliant. So, pleasure speaking to you all today. So today I'm going to speak to you a little bit about blue light, give you an overview on what it is, where it comes from, and also how it affects us and employees in the workplace, and if anything can be done about it. So I just want to start with a little bit of background about myself, just to give you an insight into what I do and why I'm very interested in this field. So I studied dispensing optics at City University in London in 2010, and then went on to do a BSc optometry course, and I spent about 5 or 6 years just studying my expertise within the eye sector. While I was at university, I actually started a dissertation project which was on how blue light affects the eye physiology and the sleep cycles and circadian rhythms. I was actually quite naturally intrigued by this, and saw that there was a lot of blue light around us and it was affecting us in numerous ways. And from there I kind of started developing products and solutions that can help us live in this digital age. And yeah, really, so I'm here just I'm at the moment I do a lot of consulting and also as I said, create solutions to help people in the digital age. So let's start with the blue light information. So I just want to bring your attention to this image here. So blue light, first of all, is everywhere. It is found in the sunlight, and it's especially common in digital devices, iPhones, laptops, tablets, and as well as LED lighting around us, which I'll touch on a bit later. But looking at this diagram, we can see that a lot of devices that we use at the moment, they're all based on LED technology. And looking at the left-hand side of this image, you can see that blue light, which is coming from the source, is actually converted to white light using phosphors. So this means you can't actually see this blue light that's emitted. So it comes out as white light. So here we have a kind of diagram which explores the spectrum of light. So I wanted to start speaking about blue light and where we find it. So firstly, as I mentioned, it comes from the sun and it's similar to UV light. Much like ultraviolet light, blue light has both dangers and benefits to our health. Now, the diagram represents a proportion of the visible light spectrum. As some of you may know, on the left-hand side, we have UV light. So that's from 0 nanometers all the way up to 400 nanometers. So you might be aware when you pick up sunglasses, they have a sticker which says UV 400, and that means that all the UV light up to 400 nanometers is blocked. Now, what we see is blue light comes very soon after that, from 400 to around 500 nanometers. And from the diagram here, you can see blue light has a shorter wavelength, but it has more wavelength, so it has a higher frequency. So actually less of it is required to cause damage or make an effect to our bodies, affecting our eyes and sleep. Now, we can separate the blue light into 3 segments. So firstly, we have the 400 nanometers to the 450 nanometers. This blue light range has been shown in research to cause retinal cell death and eye damage with acute blue light sources. Fortunately, current research shows that there's not a significant amount of blue light from screens which is causing kind of lasting damage to the eyes, although more research needs to be done, because if we're looking at, now the amount of blue light exposure we have, we don't know what the long-term effects on certain devices are only over a decade old. So there needs to be more done on that side of things. Secondly, we have the segment 450 to 470 nanometers. So this is the blue light which contributes towards eye strain and sleep disturbance. So this is the important segment we'll be looking at today in detail. Finally, you have 470 nanometers to 500 nanometers. So this is known as the good blue light. So this is the good blue light that's emitted from the sun. It kind of tells our bodies that it's the daytime. It regulates our sleep-wake cycle. And also it's used in seasonal disorders where people suffer from depression because they're not getting enough blue light. So those are the three segments there. So here we have a graph. So this graph is actually taken by a machine called a spectrometer. So what we've done here is we've got a Lenovo 21.5-inch monitor, and what we've done is we've stuck that in front of the spectrometer to gather the data of the light that's emitted from the screen. Now on the screen we just had a Microsoft Word document open, and from the results you can actually see here that there's actually a large spike in the blue light element, and it's peaking at 460 nanometers. So if we remember correctly from the last slide, I'm just going to go back for your benefits. We can see that's directly between that second segment where it affects our eyes and sleep. Now, in comparison to the other light emitted from the screen, you can see the blue light, the spike in the wavelength has 25% more intensity than the green lights and 30% more intensity than the red lights. So what does this mean, and how can it affect our eyes? So firstly, blue light, one of the problems is the eyes, and how it affects us is, the eyes are highly underrated and almost taken for granted by people, because most people assume they can see, so they don't give their eyes a second thought. But what we're discussing here is computer vision syndrome. So this actually has been stated as the #1 occupational hazard in the 21st century, decreasing productivity in the workplace. It also has other names such as visual fatigue and digital eye strain. So these terms are all used as the same names given for computer vision syndrome. So if you do see them around, it's effectively the same thing. Computer vision syndrome technically does consist of eye-related issues as well as neck or back pain, but we'll be focusing on the next few slides on the eye-related issues only. Now, computer vision syndrome has been characterized as a range of eye and vision-related symptoms and has been a recognized health problem for over 20 years. But the guidance on working with display screen equipment by the government was actually created in 1992. There's been one or two updates since, but there's not anything that's directly looked at how screens are affecting our long-term health and also our short-term health in the way of our sleep and eye strain. So, we really want to push this to government and stakeholders to really look at this problem, because it's actually, something new that we're living in this digital age with. And also nowadays, the average person in the UK spends 4 hours, 50 minutes directly looking at a screen in a 24-hour day, which is quite an alarming statistic. So how does computer vision syndrome affect the eyes? Well, there's two segments here. So one, you have external. So this is where you get feeling of a dry eye, a burning eye, and this kind of leads to irritation on the outside surface of the eyes. And secondly, you have the internal elements where you have eye strain, fatigue, aches, and headaches behind the eyes. And this is due to the accommodation and binocular vision stresses where blue light actually contributes towards this. Now, what we frequently get asked is, how do you actually measure eye strain? It's very subjective, and you can do questionnaires, a scale of 1 to 10 of how people are feeling the eyes are strained. But actually, when doing research, there's something called the critical flicker fusion frequency, so CFF. And what this means is effectively, this is the metric that is used to when measuring eye strain, and it effectively is when a flickering light is indistinguishable from a steady non-flickering light. So if people are suffering from eye strain, they won't be able to distinguish between those two light sources anymore. And that time difference shows that eye strain is now in effect effectively. And that's what is used to look at research on how eye strain affects people in the workplace or outside of the workplace. And we know this was a recent study done at the College of Optometry in the University of Missouri in St. Louis. What they did was they had a sample size of around 36 university students actually, and they looked at the data before they used a computer screen, and they gave them a task to do on the computers for about 2 hours, and they found by using blue filtering products, they found that there was a significant reduction in the critical flicker fusion frequency results, and it showed that actually, eye strain can be limited by actually removing the blue light element from screens, which was quite an interesting study. Now, because of that study, they're pushing actually other research bodies to do a higher sample size and look at how now further research can develop. And it's also important to add, without any blue light technology, that CFF metrics stayed the same. So the second problem we have here is, sleep. So sleep, it's one of the pillars of optimal health, and it's just as important as diet and exercise. So we know poor sleep is linked to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and depression. It's also one of the strongest risk factors for obesity. Now, we know that blue light disrupts the body's natural production of a hormone called melatonin. So melatonin is very important because it actually reminds our bodies when it's time to go to sleep. Now, in the UK, at least 28 million people are sleep deprived in the UK. And we know sleep deprivation has health consequences. Furthermore, 200,000 working days are lost in the UK every year due to insufficient sleep. So this means people not working efficiently enough, productivity levels are low. So we know when you sleep better, you feel better, and you get more done, and thus increasing productivity. And our quality of sleep suffers as well. It turns out the single biggest contributor to collective sleep problems at the moment is the use of artificial lighting and electronics at night. Because of the blue light, as I mentioned, it tricks our brains into thinking it's the daytime. And numerous studies have shown that blue light in the evening specifically disrupts the brain's natural sleep cycles, which are crucial for optimal functioning of the body. So how does this affect employees in the workplace? Well, usually working was 9 to 5, during those hours. But what we're finding now is there's flexible working. People are staying in the offices till later, working till 8 p.m. and then heading home. And even if they do head home, they're using their devices given through procurement, laptops, phones to send emails, or just using them generally when they get home, just for leisure activities as well. And what effectively you're doing is, if you look at the diagram on the bottom right, we can actually have a look at the melatonin levels that are excreted in the body. So if we look at where the sun is, the yellow segment there, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., we see that there's not a lot of melatonin being produced. But as soon as we hit 7 p.m., you see a big sharp rise in the red graph there, and that's how the body should be working and how melatonin should be released, and that allows us again to fall asleep naturally and easily, and it allows you to be well rested. But what we're doing is we're actually bringing artificial light into our homes, and we're also using it throughout the evenings if we're staying in the offices. Now, this is having a detrimental effect on our circadian rhythms, and therefore making it harder for employees to fall asleep, therefore reducing the quality of the sleep and then affecting how they work the following day. So what I'd say, a rule of thumb is, screen time after 6 p.m. will disturb the natural sleep processes. So obviously it is easier said than done, in the digital age. So I've got some solutions that I want to speak to you about, which can help mitigate that risk. So what can be done? It's very important that the employee takes initiative through education. So education does need to be applied here on the best practices. Now, the first thing I've got there is an eye examination. You know, visual abnormalities increase the problems of eye strain specifically. So if they've not had their eyes tested and need the correction, then obviously it's going to cause more of a problem. And I'm quite surprised as an optometrist myself, a lot of employees work in places with, you know, computer screens and visual display units, and they're not aware that the employers have to provide them with a free eye examination. And furthermore, a lot of employees don't take up that offer. So it should be a metric which should be in the workplace increased year on year of taking up on that offer, because it is very important. Simple other things that can be done is, you know, reducing the brightness of the screens means that the intensity of the blue light is reduced. Therefore, you know, less of the symptoms. Obviously, it may not be a long-term solution, but it's something where someone can also see, you know, if they're reducing the brightness, they can see, oh, is there an element of eye strain because of the light from the screens? And it's quite a good indication. Thirdly, you've got working distance. Now, working distance, if you have your screen very close to you, that increases the proximity and the amount of blue light which is absorbed by your eyes that affects us. So pushing further away your visual display, you know, your screen, can help actually reduce the exposure of blue light. And then lastly, I have here is the 20-20-20 rule. So what this means is, you might have commonly heard of it already. It's something that's said quite a lot. Every 20 minutes, an employee should be taking a 20-second break and looking away 20 feet. So that means down the corridor or outside of the window. What that does, it just resets the visual system, and it allows the accommodation to reset effectively. So you're not getting a cumulative effect of tired eyes, blue light exposure effectively. So now I'm just going to go through some commercial solutions that are kind of dealing with the blue light problem at the moment. So firstly, we have software. Now, there's software out there which changes the color of the screen, which effectively masks the blue light, therefore reducing it. So we can see here on the iPhone screens we have here on the right-hand side, the software is activated. You can see it's obviously not the most cosmetically pleasing or aesthetically pleasing screen, but it is a solution to reduce blue light. You know, the pros of this are that, you know, if you were to install this for a network or your workplace, you know, IT can do that succinctly and, you know, upload that onto all of the devices. But again, yeah, the aesthetics aren't very appealing for everyone, and what we find is people usually turn this off or don't use it at all because they have color sensitive work they're doing or want to look at documents which, you know, they want to see adequately. Second commercial solution is one that we're developing at, or have developed at OcuShield. So we develop screen filters and protectors that go onto smartphones, tablets, and computer monitors. They go directly onto the screen. Unlike software, we don't have a retro orange tinge because the products actually absorb blue light, and it goes directly onto the source of blue light. Therefore, it fits multiple devices, whereas software you might not be able to install on multiple devices. It's also a class 1 medical device, therefore it's been, you know, gone through the due diligence of the medicines and healthcare regulatory agencies, which means that it does what it says and it's safe for the market. One of the downsides is if it does break, or, you know, the filters are misplaced, then a replacement is needed effectively. A third solution is blue light filtering glasses or coatings. So if people wear glasses already, they can go to their options and to blue light filtering coating. Now, I know Vision Express and Boots do these coatings as well as some other independents. Specsavers don't. The coatings are a good starting point, but do note they only reduce 20% of the blue light, which is a small amount. It does help, but it's not significant to bring down the spike of the blue light wavelengths in accordance to the other types of light in the visible spectrum. You can also get specific glasses for people that don't wear prescription glasses. So we manufacture glasses which computer wearers can pop on, and it removes the blue light. Again, the pro of glasses is glasses are worn all the time. So whatever device you're looking at, whatever lighting you're looking at, the blue light will be removed. And I haven't had a chance to speak about this a lot, but lighting also does emit a lot of blue light. So the lighting in offices, although you're not looking at it directly like a computer screen, it's indirect, so it has less of an effect, but it's still effective if the employee's staying in the office, outside of 9 to 5, after 5 p.m. and they're going home late, then this white light is going to be very strong, and it's going to be, messing up their circadian rhythms and also giving them very, very tired eyes. When we look at the metrics, we're talking about white light so the term is kelvins. So anything above 5,000 kelvins has a lot of white light. You want to aim for something that has below 3,000 kelvins. It's a warmer light. In offices, this can be done using dimmers, or it can be done with automated systems. Obviously, it's a large job changing lighting, but it ensures that obviously in the workplace you have the correct type of lighting for your employees working round the clock. So why is it important to know, and how does it affect employees in the workplace? Why does it matter? So ultimately, increasing employee productivity is one of the most critical goals in business and remains a high priority for HR and facility managers. We know high-performing and innovative employees are the cornerstone of a successful company. That's why it's important to keep employees healthy and happy. In fact, a study from the Health Enhancement Research Organization found that healthy employees are actually 25% more likely to have better job performance. That means in a whole week, they could add a whole day's work if they were able to work to their optimum levels. Okay, thank you. I'd like to open up for any questions.
Thank you, Dhruvin. That was brilliant. I mean, I have to say that we're seeing more and more people complaining of eye problems and headaches as well. And that can sometimes set off their migraines too. So it's certainly of a moment. Yes, we've certainly got a few questions, but before I ask anybody else's question, can I ask you one that's actually probably not directly related to blue light, but one I come across quite a lot? If people wanting to have their screens on in very dark rooms, I personally feel this is probably a contributor to eye strain because of the amount of work the eye is doing, but I'd appreciate a professional view on that.
Yeah, sure. So definitely using screens in a dark environment is actually worse than using a well-lit environment. The reason is when we're in a dark environment, our pupils expand in size about 3 millimeters. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but for your pupils, it is. And what it does, by increasing the size, you actually have more chromatic aberrations and more harmful light entering your eyes, and especially if you're just using a screen. So in effect, what happens is you're more likely to have binocular vision stress and lead to a point where you're fatigued a lot quicker than if you were in a well-lit room.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, and that makes it very clear, and I think it's something I can explain to people who are trying to do that. So thank you for that. So moving on to our listeners' questions. I've got a question about, let me read this to get it right. Any guidance do you have for staff who have floaters and struggle with the brightness of the screen, which can make their floaters more visible?
Yeah, sure. So floaters is it's an interesting topic. Floaters happen because of a jelly in the eye which comes away. Floaters, if they're new within the last 6 weeks, you should always recommend them go to see their optician, because there could be a retinal tear or a detachment. If they've had it for longer, it's one of the main things I advise patients is try to stop following them around. So floaters, people like to keep looking at them. Effectively, your brain's very clever. The more you pay less attention you pay to it, the less the person will look through the floater, because the floater is actually a transparent object, and the reason you see a floater is because light casts a shadow on it, so it seems as a black object. So what I'd say is, ask them not to pay much attention to it if they've had it for a long time, to reduce seeing it. But also, on white backgrounds, you're going to see floaters a lot more. So in terms of working environments and brightness, it's probably better to have a lower brightness settings in the environment, so they don't see the floaters. And again, some filters, like for example the Ocushield filter, we have a anti-glare function and a reduction in some of the the high wavelength light, which makes floaters a bit more apparent, so they can also help in the aesthetics for the user that's using a screen or in the workplace.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Got another question here about whether you can put a blue light filter as well as a privacy screen.
Yeah, sure. So very good question, actually. So with OcuShield, we were actually creating blue light screen filters before, and what we found for the offices and corporate environment was a lot of people already had privacy screens on, so they couldn't take them off to put an OcuShield on. So actually this year we actually released in September a product which combines both of these products. So we have a blue light filter with an infused privacy screen, so you can stay on the right side of GDPR and also, you know, ensure that your employees are not harming themselves on blue light and have fresher feeling eyes and sleep better.
That's great. Brilliant. Here's an interesting one. Do curved screens play a contributing factor? This person is saying they currently use a 34-inch curved screen.
In terms of eye strain?
I think probably yes.
Yeah, so curved screens, what happens with curved screens is that they can play an effect depending, it all depends on where you're positioning yourself and if you're using one or two screens. Because effectively what's happening is if you have a flat screen, the light only has one direction to go in, which is outwards. If you have a curved screen, you know, some of the light could be diffracting off the screen itself or bouncing in the wrong direction, and that therefore causing you eye strain and, you know, some unfortunate symptoms while using the screen. So it depends on where you're sitting in terms of your screens, but it can cause problems if not, you know, you're not set up properly. So that's why a DSC assessment is very important.
Okay, great, thank you. I've got another question about people. Number of staff have cluster headaches. What's the best practice for them? I mean, would blue light be a factor for that possibly?
Yeah, sure. So headaches is a vast subject. You know, cluster headaches, you know, if people are suffering from them, and it's very important to look at the history of their headaches and when they're being set off and around what time and due to what they're doing. Now, if they're telling you they're happening, you know, after screen use or towards the end of the day, then, you know, it could be a telling sign that blue light is contributing towards cluster headaches, and removing that blue light will actually alleviate their symptoms. But yeah, with headaches, yeah, I'd always say, you know, explore that with a general practitioner as well, because headaches are so vast, it could be anything, and it also can be a sign of some early problems. So it's always best to get that fully investigated.
Okay, excellent. This is one that's very close to my heart. Aging eyes. I understand that as your eyes age, your ability to take in blue light, in fact, it may be all light, goes down. Can you just talk a little bit about aging eyes and their ability, you know, the lighting issues behind that? Because I think with the aging workforce, we probably need to be very aware of it.
Of course, yeah. So a very good question. I'd like to start in the infancy actually with that. So in terms of children, so children's eyes up until their teenage years actually don't fully develop. Therefore, something known as the lens in the eye, it doesn't absorb blue light or UV light. So they're actually more susceptible to blue light and UV light damage up until the teenage years. So they should be looked after even more. But that's a whole different topic. So let's going back onto the workplace and the aging eyes. As we get older, again, the lens in the eye, if you imagine it's a clear window when we're born, as we go through life, this window becomes a little bit more tainted because it's been absorbing UV light throughout the life, and it becomes also a bit thicker because of us aging. Now, this means less blue light is entering our bodies because of that natural filter there. So this can actually have an effect on seasonal disorders, because, you know, if you're outside during the day in the sunlight and you want your body to know that it's the daytime, because you're reducing that blue light, it can cause problems with there. But secondly, when people get their cataracts removed in the eyes, which actually happen in the range of 55 to 70 years old, when people remove their cataracts, then their eyes actually effectively a clear window again. So then they're open to a lot more blue light exposure. So, you know, taking it back to the infancy example. So people need to protect themselves when they've had cataracts removed effectively.
Do you think that's often explained? It's funny. I mean, I know a lot of people have had cataract surgery, and I don't remember them ever talking about that. Maybe it just didn't come up. But I don't think. I mean, people are very aware. I mean, I was certainly very unaware of what you were saying about children's eyes. Actually, that's a very interesting point, considering especially how much time they spend on screens these days.
Yes, it's great for children. It's you know, it's actually a really big problem, because at the moment schools are moving homework onto iPads, and now, you know, they're using screens all the time at home as well.
I've got a note here just saying, how whether we could just sort of go over how effective the software options are on the phones and whatever. Are these effective blue light filters, or are there better options?
I'd say they are effective, but what you have is you don't have the employee engagement levels are low. So what we found is when people are using them, for example, children or adults, there's a lot of turning the software on and off, and you forget once it's off again. So that compliance is a big issue there, and you obviously don't want to just leave it on and force them to use it, because if they got work to do with it, they want to enjoy using it, then it's not going to work. So just because of the compliance issue, it just doesn't work out well for most people, and that's why filters work better, because they can keep them on the surface and it's always on without affecting the color of the screen.
Right. So, and again, we all know that in health and safety, compliance is one of the big issues, isn't it? You can have a really good solution, but actually, if it's not used, then it's not a solution. So that's, yeah. Got an interesting one here about SAD lamps. Now, actually, that's something quite interesting. So we are seeing a number of people using these SAD lamps. Do you have how does that affect things? Obviously, they give up huge amounts of blue light.
Yeah, sure. So most of the SAD lamps, for example, we're developing one and launching in January. Actually, most of the SAD lights should only emit the good blue light, so above the 470 nanometers. So therefore, it's not going to be causing any detrimental effect to your eyes or your sleep or your bodies. And therefore, SAD lamps should be used 5 to 20 minutes in the morning, for example, or as described by a practitioner. So most of them are safe, but we haven't I haven't tested all of them to see what blue light comes out of them, but I'm pretty sure most of them emit blue light above the 470 nanometers, which is fine, which is safe for the eyes.
Right, so it's certainly worth checking if you're going to get one that's the range that they're emitting in.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Notice somebody's obviously had taken an interest in your products here, and they're asking, they're saying that you actually yourselves only do filters for iPads and Samsung. Are you going to branch out into Amazon devices? There you go. That's a very specific question for you. Are you branching your products out?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of devices to cover. We're branching out into the Huawei, Google Pixel, and Amazon devices. If you're talking about the Kindle, I assume. I don't know any other devices they may have. Or yeah. So we're looking at that. That's probably not in the near future. Maybe 4 to 6 months away, the Amazon models. But we are looking at exploring. Now there's a huge demand for it. We've got to try and cover more people's devices they're using. But we cover the majority of the popular ones at the moment.
Okay, I think probably the question is, if in doubt, ask, really, I suppose, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're running out of time. I've just got one final question, I think. What about televisions? Showing my age here, you're always told about television's bad for you and everything else. We've not talked about them as a display. Is it the fact they're just so far away that they're not an issue, or actually are they just not an issue?
Yeah, so televisions, again, they're built on LED screens as well, so they are an issue. But again, it's the working distance. So we sit a lot further away than we do with computer screens. So the proximity of the television, by the time that light's reaching your eyes, the intensity of it's not going to be causing you a problem. But again, if you've got children or people that are sitting very close to the TV screens, then again, it's a concern there.
Okay, that's great. Now we've run out of time, and so Dhruvin, I'm going to have to say thank you so much for that. I think it's obviously been very well received. It's certainly given me some information I was unaware of. Obviously, if anyone's got any questions going forwards, they can contact us, and we can put you in touch and that sort of thing. So I think really, so to say thank you very much. Just to let people know that we don't have a webinar in December because I'm off having too much fun, but we will restart in January. And if anyone has any thoughts on about webinars they'd like us to run, then please let us know. So Dhruvin, I just want to say thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us, and enjoy the holiday season, and we'll see you in 2019. So thank you very much, and goodbye now.